Welcome to Real Estate Radio Live, an informative and engaging podcast discussing everything you need to know about the world of real estate. Your host, Joe Caccera, provides you with insight and guidance on how to buy, sell, finance, and invest in real estate. He also offers real estate tax management strategies, new construction advice, home improvement tips, and much, much more. And now, to guide you around the world of real estate, here's your host and Real Estate Radio Live team leader, Joe Caccera.
Welcome in, Joe Caccera with Real Estate Radio Live. Thank you for those that are continuing to follow the show here on Facebook. We appreciate that very much. And maybe if some of you are online, or I should say on Facebook, watching the show, this is a Friday. Typically we do the shows Tuesday, Wednesdays, Thursdays, but depending on those schedules and the guests that we have, we are here on Friday. In the studio, as most of you will see if you watch the show, later on if you're downloading. Check us out every once in a while. Go on to Facebook or take a look at the video. Go to YouTube. It's fun. We have a studio here in Los Gatos. We do the show, again, 3 days a week. And we've expanded the show. Talked about this for the last couple of years. Jack Russo is here with me today, and we'll introduce our guest in just a moment. We started last year with growing your business. I should say starting a business.
Right.
Then we growing your business. And then we're doing more and more. Today's kind of an example. I might have mentioned this a couple of weeks ago, and I've been putting a lot of thought into, really adding the community component. We did a lot of live shows for several years, Jack. I think I mentioned to you at hotels, different places where we called it Real Estate Community, RE Community,
right.
Live and events. So it's really about the community. Even though the focus is mostly real estate, people live in homes, buy homes, sell homes. They work here. Everything we do is about the community.
It is, and first of all, I want to thank you for changing the show to Friday because
Sure.
I was in Los Angeles this week on a case.
Did it go well?
It went well, but,
Good.
I went to law school. I want to take a segue here before we introduce Jacob Savage, who's our guest, who's going to do more of the talking or most of the talking. But I went to UCLA Law School back in the 70s, so
Okay.
I know Los Angeles. But back in that time frame, downtown L.A. was a total dump.
Yeah.
I mean, a total dump. Now, there were courthouses there were courts of appeal, there were trial courts, so we had to go there. But it was sort of a dangerous, challenging place. It is literally 40-plus years later totally gentrified.
Yeah.
I mean, I do go there mostly for court, but I spend
Sure.
some time now. And I was like, wow. Where did all the homeless people go?
Oh, they're there. They're there.
They're there, but they're like in tent cities, and they're sort of in different places. But the main downtown area has completely gentrified. And, of course, there are a lot of police officers. We're going to talk about that and what it does to the community. There's a lot of security guards. There's a lot of presence of what seems to be cameras and people watching people to protect people. Of course, there's still a lot of crime in Los Angeles, as we know.
Right.
And so it's an interesting segue to, I was lucky enough today to have Jacob at a lunch where we were listening to a pitch from a startup entrepreneur. We'll put him in as a footnote to the story. And then I said to him, hey, you've been doing some really interesting stuff in the nonprofit world
Right.
to help communities. Why don't we do the show that's scheduled for this afternoon, instead of talking about growing a for-profit business, which was on the agenda, let's talk about what you've done in the nonprofit area, because he also has some great ideas about what the future might be. So with that, let me introduce, this is actually the son of Dr. Sam Savage,
who was on the show.
Show. Your dad did one of the first audio illustrations,
yeah.
right? Like what does it mean when you actually crash and burn? And he had like a sound on his machine, like it was really good. And I said, we got to get some of these sounds on the show. And you're into music, and that's sort of part of what you'll tell us about.
Yeah.
But tell us about the journey, because you've created a nonprofit that was actually helping some of these issues in the inner city in San Francisco, where you live, right?
Yeah, give us you were starting to tell me in the office before we jumped on here, Jay, but give us a background and history as you started to tell me. It's great. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I grew up in Palo Alto, California, and I spent about 1,000 hours as a police cadet with the city from like 16 to 21 years old, riding along with police, wearing a cadet uniform, a bulletproof vest, and really thinking I want to be a police officer. I went to UC Santa Cruz and created my own major of law enforcement studies,
Wow, you were committed.
I was very
really
committed. And but going to UC Santa Cruz turns out not to be the best place to go.
Sure, on to West Point or something,
to
right?
Nurture a up-and-coming law enforcement career.
Okay.
But I got exposed to the reality of the justice system and the unfortunate consequences of the way that we've designed law enforcement in America. They call it Anglo-Saxon policing, I think, is the style of law enforcement that we've adopted here. So I abandoned that career path and I left school, no degree, started playing music full-time, and that took me up to Eugene, Oregon, where they have an amazing model called CAHOOTS, which is part of the Whitebird Clinic. And CAHOOTS is an agency that delivers compassionate crisis response to anybody in the city of Eugene dealing with a mental health issue, homelessness, substance abuse, and they're working in coordination with the city's public safety department to field calls coming into 911 and get dispatched directly by 911 to handle these calls that in any other jurisdiction you would have police or paramedics responding to. Of course, it saves the city a ton of money on diverted law enforcement costs and ambulance rides. It's way more effective at actually getting people the help they need rather than showing up with a gun-wielding police officer. Even if they're not wielding a gun, they're just showing up. The symbol of the badge and the gun are inherently escalating and triggering for a lot of people.
Right.
And they're preventing tragedies. It's just clearly effective. I don't need to spend too much time selling the idea.
Right.
It probably seems like a good idea, but it doesn't exist really anywhere else.
Yeah, I mean, I want to hear more about San Francisco, but what I want to take a moment to just, as I listen to this and earlier and I'm thinking about it, you know, we do these great shows all the time on real estate and business, and we talk about a lot of things that are going on. We share some of the negative things as well, but the reality is there's a lot of people suffering in the community on a regular basis, and we have a lot of people have a tendency to ignore that, and this is a great example of someone that, you know, you went up there and took that trip. I never even heard of anything like that. It's amazing. And I've actually spent some time, I had mentioned with him, some family members that have dealt with depression, mental illness and things. I spent a lot of time reading, went to some conferences and such to try to better educate myself. And I've never heard anything like this. It's amazing. I think it's wonderful.
Yeah, it's bizarre to me that it hasn't gone viral yet.
Right.
The day will come soon, but I was so inspired by what we found in Eugene. I did some ride-alongs with this organization, riding on the van with these crisis workers, and I was so inspired to bring the model down here. So 5 years ago we started an organization called Concrn, spelled CONCRN, where we brought compassionate crisis response to the streets of San Francisco, focused mainly on the Tenderloin district.
Okay.
Which is a pretty tough neighborhood near the federal courthouse in downtown San Francisco.
Yeah.
So I know that neighborhood too, and it's changed, and it's changing rapidly as well. Right.
And so
a lot of gentrification happening there.
Right. It's gentrification, and it's the type of gentrification that doesn't displace, it concentrates, which is a really interesting phenomenon. The more San Francisco gentrifies, the more money that comes into downtown, almost the worse and the poor people get, because they're now getting pushed closer together. There's less housing. There's more people in the streets. It's like a pressure cooker, and you have this crazy incidence of mental health crises. You also have much more opportunity for robbery and burglary and window smashes, because as the wealth pours in, it's like, hey,
opportunity abounds.
Break me off a piece, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And so,
well, it makes so much sense, and I don't know if you have the statistics behind it, you may not, but, you know, the amount of maybe calls that you had mentioned that police get, because who else are you going to call when there's an issue, and it's maybe someone dealing with mental illness or something going on that's really not kind of crime police related. As you'd mentioned, they take those resources. Do you have any idea, like, percentage of calls maybe in San Francisco or Eugene that, like, they associated those where maybe it didn't really require an officer, someone like the program that you guys talked about?
Yeah, well, it's a very subjective analysis. I mean, everybody thinks you need a police officer, or not everybody. I'm saying. Lots of people think you need a police officer with a gun for anybody in crisis, because what if they pull out a gun?
Right.
They're unpredictable. What we found in 4 years of doing the response was, when you don't show up with a gun, you don't need a gun.
Amazing, huh?
bringing a gun to a mental health crisis is a self-fulfilling prophecy for why you'd need a gun in the first place. We were trusted in the community, and people looked out for us. They helped protect us, you know.
Well, you actually had a purple vest.
Yeah, we wore these purple vests. I would walk around with a trumpet, maybe bring a football too. These were like our tasers and our guns were our trumpets and our footballs.
Like a diffuser.
Yeah, exactly. Instead of escalating the situation, we try to diffuse and positively engage people. Not be like a brick wall and say, stop what you're doing. But like if they're doing something wrong or they're doing something destructive, trying to redirect that energy and say, hey, let's toss the football. Let's do something different.
Yeah, you guys are an alternative to, I know there's 800 crisis you could call if you're suicide and a lot of different mental illnesses. But this is a real face-to-face community service where you're touching someone, showing up someone, talking to someone, playing music with someone, really touching the spirit of this person.
Yeah, and the idea is that we're showing up in person and rapidly responding and beating the police to the scene. And also, we're proud to say that police called us a lot more than we called them. So police called us like 70 times maybe.
Boy.
From different agencies, BART Police, San Francisco Police, UCPD.
It's like 12 different layers of
police there's like
in San Francisco,
exactly.
Right? Plus Homeland Security is like
you got
there
Homeland
as well,
Security,
right?
CHP, you got Sheriff's Department.
And we haven't even gotten to the INS, immigration, right? But I think I saw a statistic that said that half of the 911 calls were not real 911 emergencies.
That makes sense.
And in fact, it's actually bogged up the 911 system. And I always said, and this is just me because this is the way I think, and of course my wife laughs and says, you know, no one's ever going to do that.
It's just Jack talking again.
But I always thought there should be a 611 that gets you the emotional, compassionate response or some sort of non-police response, and a 311 that gets you some sort of medical help. And that if we had to do infrastructure in this country, we wouldn't do walls and crazy stuff like that. We would do what we're good at, which is using IT, information technology, to enable the phone system with cell phones, which everyone has, including even people in poverty, because they get that, I guess, these days. You could talk about that. Where, hey, if you've got a medical situation, you can press 311, and maybe you get someone who's like a paramedical person that gives you some basic, screening. And 611 if it's something else, if it's more of like a situation between spouses or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Not a police event and all
that would be a great invention for San Francisco because we would call 911 frequently when there were dangerous situations, guns and knives or anything that we thought police should be at. And, of course, we're much happier to call police if we're already there to mediate and hopefully prevent harmful things from happening. But we would get put on hold like 50% of the time when we called 911. And there's a lot of people calling 911 because there's a homeless person going through their recycling bin. And I'd say it's way more than 50% of 911 calls are not 911 calls. I can only imagine like maybe 20% in San Francisco.
So is this program, you said it's discontinued now in San Francisco?
Yeah, it kind of went through the full course of... I wouldn't say unfortunately. I think it's like it kind of dying is a chance for something better to emerge.
Something better, right.
I think it's going to be reiterated. I think our main purpose that we served was we showed a demonstration of what can be done, an alternative. I'm sure there's lots of ways to improve on it, and it could grow to a lot bigger. But we showed some really cool concepts. We were able to get between individuals in crisis who didn't want to see police officers and police officers who were called to address these individuals, and we were able to find alternative solutions and get people in housing and get people into shelter and get people into treatment programs. So it was a wild ride. Looking forward to the next iteration.
I mean, I would have to guess. Again, I'm not, I haven't looked at the statistics, and I want to be careful about how I phrase this, but I would guess that either all or a great majority of the homeless people are struggling with some type of mental illness. Is that probably safe to say? I'm not analyzing the whole thing, but some sort or form of, you would think, right? And I don't know that, but my point is you have millions of people that need this kind of support versus kind of the police officer response you're talking about, as I listen to you talk about this.
Right. I mean, I would argue all people have something that they're dealing with to some degree.
That's a good point.
And not all of us have the safety net and the resources and the tools and the support to deal with them. And those are the people The people that don't have those things are the ones that end up on the street.
Right.
And the people that are predisposed to not being able to get hired because of their race or because of the criminal background when they were, that they accrued when they were younger.
Yeah, I mean, I think the statistics that are out there, and some of it was on 60 Minutes either last week or the week before, is that there are homeless people that are, functional alcoholics or functional narcotics users, and they probably have, other mental illnesses and other physical disabilities, but they're actually working. And there was an example that they had on the show of someone who worked for, like, the EPA and was living out of a tent or out of a backpack or something. He just said, I can't afford it on what I get paid after taxes working for the EPA. And then they did one where it was a postal worker who was living like in an RV, and she said postal workers just don't make enough money. And some of it is the price of real estate, the price of rent. I mean, I don't know what the latest prices are in San Francisco.
Crazy.
You rent in San Francisco.
I mean,
so
it's crazy. It's crazy. It's gone up like over 100% in 9 years.
And that's a rent-controlled area. So if a studio, which, probably my guess is a decent studio in San Francisco is like $2,500 a month.
I think you're right.
You have to earn after taxes north of $50,000 just to pay the rent.
To pay rent.
And that's, forget about living expenses.
That was 9 years ago.
Yeah, so it's even more.
No, I mean,
it's even way more now.
Way more now. One bedroom studio.
Wow.
Yeah, and I understand that roughly 20 to 25% of homeless are made up of ex-military or veterans that are on the streets too, which is also another issue here, right? That is heartbreaking.
That is Obama. Thankfully, at least started getting most of those guys into housing.
Did he? Okay.
But there's still a ton of vets on the street. They're supposed to be off the street by now, but there's still a ton of them on the street. And even if they got into housing, a lot of them fell out because there weren't enough support services in the housing. So,
well, what if during the show we'll do it a couple of times again? I know. So tell us, are you actively doing anything? Are you looking for other opportunities to do this? Are you going to continue trying other? If so, we could give out phone number, and name, or information if someone wants to help or support some way. Or are you not quite there yet? What is
you got some brilliant ideas.
Well, right now we are. I'm playing music a lot full time. Just kind of processing the last 5 years and. Yeah, basically getting by playing music. But one thing that we're doing with the music is we're playing in public on the street, and there's an event we get hired for that happens every month, which is a big homeless services event where 300 to 400 homeless people go through the intake, and it's like a big outdoor festival where you get showers and legal services and medical. And we actually play music at this event for the purpose of maintaining the peace and promoting a sense of calm. And when I was with Concrn, we would actually do compassionate crisis response at these events to keep people safe. And that would be us walking around looking for people in crisis.
With the purple vest on.
With the purple vest on. And that was good, but there's a part of me that thinks maybe by looking for a crisis, you're creating a crisis subconsciously. And so now by just playing music, the rate of incidents and crises and violence has gone like to zero, basically. And we just play music, and it's good vibes for the.
Is it any particular kind of music? Is there some correlation between the type of music and the type of calming effect?
We try to play music. Yeah. We try to play music that everybody enjoys and is danceable.
Danceable. Okay.
There was I gotta figure out who did this research, but there's an article that I have in my Google Drive that showed a similarity between the brainwaves generated by somebody listening to dance music and the brainwaves generated by a Buddhist monk meditating.
Really?
So there's
similar.
There's
similar,
or the same same type of brainwave.
Has the same effect on your brainwaves.
Okay.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah. So I think it's called beta waves. I should look up the study.
It has a calming effect.
It has a calming effect, and it also has to do with the same logic they used at Civic Center and Powell Street BART stations in San Francisco, where they've started to blast like classical and jazz music on the speakers.
Really?
Like at 24 hours a day. So, yeah.
Tell me about the monthly event. So can people get involved, show up, donate money, participate? What about the monthly event?
Yeah, well, so the monthly event is hosted by this wonderful organization that was a partner with Concrn called Lava May.
Okay.
Lava May, wash me in Spanish. And they're basically turned municipal buses in San Francisco into portable mobile showers.
Oh, nice.
That was how they started, and now they have a bunch of trailers with showers. And this monthly event is called the Pop-Up Care Village, which is a coming together of lots of homeless service providers to provide these services. We actually just had one in Oakland yesterday, so we're going between Oakland and San Francisco. Yeah, Lava Mae is awesome. You can go to lavamae.org, LAVAMAE.org.
Okay, and that's where people could find out if they could donate or help or participate. Or
they're awesome.
But the same problem exists in San Jose, so I would think you could easily extend your geography. Because people, as you know, I go overseas and teach Russia and Poland, and they all think like Silicon Valley, that's the home of all you billionaires, right? There's like no one poor.
No one's got any problems.
And then I show them, because they're shocked, because I take some footage of along El Camino. You've got all these RVs stacked up one after the other. It's like RV Village. I said, it's not totally what you may think, that it's not all Elon Musk's and super wealthy that exists. Yes, they exist, but believe me, there's a lot of poverty or barely above the line of poverty that here, and you'd be amazed. These people are often working, but they're not making enough money. It's a reality.
Right, and that's one of the most helpful things we can do is that we discovered like late in the game is instead of offering services to these people, which sometimes makes them just feel like charity cases and doesn't nurture their own self-driven motivation, right, is to, instead of say, how can we help you, is to say, hey, can you help me with something? Can you watch my trumpet while I run and use the restroom? Can I trust you with my keys while I mean, I'm not sure why I need to give my keys, but asking them to help you with things and asking people to help you fill out some paperwork, help you locate a client that you're looking for that might be at risk or is missing. That sense of responsibility instills like a very valuable self-valuing trait to these people. It's like they often treated like animals and treated in less than human ways. And when you do that, they're going to respond in the way that you'd expect them to. So it's like treat them like a human, they'll act like a human. And treat them like somebody that you trust, then you can trust them. Treat them like you can't trust them, and then they might,
Speaking of animals, along the same lines as music, my understanding is, a lot of animals are used for a lot of therapy, right? For a lot of different reasons.
Like
supportive therapy dogs, but also they bring them into senior citizen homes and people that, and there's this wonderful, loving connection with animals.
Totally.
So I think, boy, something along the lines with you combine the music and the animals.
That's called a parade.
No, absolutely. We had one of our so all the responders that we had with Concrn had to bring something out to the street with them that they could share, whether it's tangible or not. It's the idea. We went over this in the training. I bring my trumpet. I bring a football. These are the tools I use to engage with people. Some people, they can do poetry. A couple people brought their dogs, and the dogs were always like super popular. It was the tactical compassion response dog.
That's great.
Animals are great for incorporating. Anything but tasers and guns and pepper spray and handcuffs, really works.
So do you have hope that, you grew up in Eugene, Oregon, you brought it down here, you guys really had some good things going in San Francisco. Do you have hope that there's more and more awareness and maybe some community outreach and people will continue to try to bring resources together to achieve these goals?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's going to happen. If nobody else does it, I'm going to do it.
Well, what's surprising to me is that, there is a major in college called criminal justice. I guess you define your own major at university that you spent some time on. But we don't really study as much what I'll call these alternative techniques. Like, it is creative to say, let's try music as a calming effect. And you would think, gosh, once you have the sense that, hey, this works, maybe there would actually be some greater detailed study, perhaps based on a grant that would be received from the federal government, because, hey, we don't need more police. We actually need maybe fewer police and more creative alternatives. And that becomes the beginning of what may be an entire new branch of thinking. When you said early on that our police function is Anglo-Saxon, the police in London I don't think, someone may say, call in and say, no, you're wrong. I don't think they carry guns, even with the recent terrorist stuff that goes on. I think they have to call in to get a gun group. I think the Bobbies and whoever else is out there, they may carry some sort of handcuffs and sticks and the like, but I don't think they actually carry live weapons. But you may know this better than I do.
Yeah, no, most cops in London, I think, still don't carry guns. But more and more, I think they're shifting towards carrying guns. And you see the thing that happened on the London Bridge. Those cops were able to respond pretty quickly with guns. You know, I'm not getting into the gun argument here. I'm saying it's a big argument. I'm saying you shouldn't bring a gun to a mental health crisis. You know, I haven't really fleshed out my opinions on whether cops should be carrying guns, because in my mind, cops have guns. I've thought a lot about where cops should be, what they should be spending their time doing, and cops will probably agree with me. They don't want to be handling mental health crises. They don't want to be handling homeless situations. These are not the things that they train for in the police academy. There is something called the CIT program, which is crisis intervention training, it's a great program. It's like a 40-hour training, but 40 hours is not nearly enough. And no matter how much training you have as a police officer, by showing up to a mental health crisis with a gun and a badge, it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter how compassionate or understanding you are of mental illness. It's the fact that those symbols are going to just create an escalation, and they just have no place.
Yeah, kind of to Jack's point, you wonder one of these days, I'm sure maybe some cities or counties are piloting this type of thing, but some different level, instead of the police that shows up with a gun, someone well-trained with crisis support and a lot of communication skills and have gone through some process and, you know, city, county paid, right? If you're 50% of your calls are not 911 or 50% of your police are responding to things that are not emergency crime driven, you would think that there's a lot of revenue there, right?
Well, the best example is when you're in a hostage situation, they don't bring in an arm. Well, they do eventually bring in an army of people with guns, but they bring in kind of the cop whisperer, the negotiator, and he's always, maybe he's wearing the bullet, or she's wearing the bulletproof vest, but they don't. They're like unarmed, and they say, "Look, I just want to talk to you. Would you let me talk to you? Would you let me come in? I'm unarmed. Let's try to talk this out." And they don't do the show of force. Well, there's a backup show of force, obviously, but they're trying to figure out a way to walk people off the ledge. And that's often misunderstood in America because we have this sort of cowboy mentality. You know, there's cowboys and Indians and right and wrong and force and the rest. So I think what you're doing is great. And the question really is, how do you build on it? Because what you're unique, because you were a founder of a nonprofit that was successful in its experiment. The experiment produced an app. The app turned out to be a big aspect to recording an event, taking photos, getting information. You have a whole database of stories. They're great stories. We don't have time for any of them, or certainly not for all of them, but that's a book that you should write. And then the question is how to now build on that, because even when something ends, there's a creative, destructive moment of let's learn everything that didn't work out and take advantage of that. And that seems to be where you are now with the music aspect, right?
I mean, the music was a small part of Concrn at first. I would just go out and play trumpet, but it became kind of part of the brand because it had such a successful effect. There were a few stories of like people literally like ready to kill each other, like they're fighting, and I started playing trumpet.
You called a timeout,
and then one of the guys that's fighting pulls a electric keyboard, a battery-powered keyboard out from under this truck, and he starts playing with me, and it was really a cool experience, and everybody starts dancing, and it was surreal.
That's great.
But sometimes music, and I take a football with me wherever I go as well, and that's a great way to engage people who are maybe feeling a lot of physical aggression, like, you know, just confining people to the tenderloin, where they went in and they said the microbiome is like similar to a third world slum in the tenderloin. Like you have a new fungus that exists in the tenderloin and nowhere else in the world. That is just a result.
Scary.
I mean, that, you know, like people are going to the bathroom. I mean, it's like
I can't imagine. I hear there's I saw some data and statistics just this week. The amount of disease and there's several words for the increase in San Francisco is just skyrocketing.
Yeah, and like you got these HIV and Hep C infected needles that are just like uncapped on the street.
Wow.
You got to like not step on them.
Yeah,
right.
We have just a couple minutes left, so. You know what? A lot of people listen to this show. A lot of people, again, not just about real estate, but they live in the community. They work in the community. They have families, friends, coworkers they care about. And you never know who's listening. My point behind that is, you know, if someone's out here listening or watching now or later on they download the podcast and they listen, how could they help other than going to the website you mentioned or contacting you? I mean, there's a lot of people out there that really like to pitch in and help in some way or another.
Yeah, I would recommend, if they're interested, taking a Tenderloin walking tour.
Oh, okay.
With a guy named Del Seymour. He runs a program called Code Tenderloin as well, and that's getting people in the Tenderloin who are homeless or recently released from prison into the employment chain. It's like they train them and they connect with employers and get them jobs, and it's an awesome program.
That's great.
Del Seymour himself was living on the streets, homeless. He was arrested like dozens of times for drug dealing, using drugs. He's cleaned his life up and is the one running this thing. I mean, it's just he's a huge success.
That's great.
He's nicknamed the mayor of the Tenderloin. So yeah, I mean, they should also get in touch with me, and I'd love to chat if anybody wants to support.
Give people your
how
email
How would they reach you? Email or phone?
Yeah, my email address is jacobcsavage@gmail.com.
Great. Jack, you have anything else?
I just want to applaud Jacob because he's taken the untraditional path. He's not after, fortune, maybe eventually fame as a result of your music, but you're doing really great things for the community, and that's a wonderful thing. And to see a young person do that and not, sort of say, hey, this has to happen, and I want to make San Francisco better and Oakland better, and then maybe we can drag you down to San Jose, because I think these events, and maybe we get his band to come to one of our shows, our live shows in San Jose, to sort of show how good their music is, because I think you do like weddings and bar mitzvahs and stuff too.
Yeah, we'll do it. We'll do it all. We'll do it all.
Yeah.
Seriously, I think.
Well, if we could ever do it, I'll tell you, this is interesting. Maybe we set up one of these times, or we actually do a podcast at one of these events in San Francisco to help out, right?
That'd be
the music in the background, interviewing people.
Yes, that'd be great.
Yeah, that's real stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Get it on YouTube and make a success out of it.
I mean, gosh, get some of these Tenderloin residents living on the street on the microphone. Hear what they say. They have a lot to say.
That's good. Well, we don't have as much to audit on podcasts. Live radio is a different story, but we have more latitude on podcasts.
I think we bring some donuts to it, and we
just
bring
need like
sweets.
a 3-second delay.
Yeah, okay, that'd be good.
Jacob, thank you. This is outstanding work. I'm glad Jack thought about bringing you here. I know it was spontaneous, but you're doing great work. A friend of mine said a while back, kind of Jack made a point a few minutes ago. We were talking about a group of kids and some of our kids that are doing more things for the community and for elderly and stuff. And we were talking about, what about business? What about, and then he stopped and he said, Joe, we have enough CEOs, we have enough millionaires, we need more people like that with compassionate hearts that are giving back, right?
Yes.
It's true.
Because if you don't keep a community culture that's positive, you'll create eventually a ghost town. I mean, the reality is that part of the culture of the community is all about, can you trust someone? Can you trust being around them? Is it a safe place? Can you learn to be compassionate? And if the community doesn't have that cycle, then eventually it's going to go away.
Good point.
Right.
Well, thanks, Jacob. Keep us posted. Maybe in the next couple of months we'll have you on, or we'll talk about having a podcast at one of these locations. We could take it. I
will totally take you up on that offer. I want to make that happen. That sounds like great. You could come to the pop-up care village where all these...
Yeah, well, send us an email when we're done here and tell me what the dates and the details of it. And then one last time, give people your email if they have any questions for you.
Jacob C. Savage, JACOB C. savage@gmail.com.
Great.
And I'm Jack Russo at computerlaw.com. You can reach me at jrusso@computerlaw.com.
This is the compassionate guy that has a law firm that does all kinds of great work.
Yeah. we didn't help Jacob start his nonprofit. If we did, it probably would be thriving now because you'd still be CEO. But we do help nonprofits. We do help groups that are trying to organize to better the community. And we do want to see success in Silicon Valley not just be about money.
Right.
It should be bigger than that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good. Thanks, Joe. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, it's Joe Caccera with Real Estate Radio Live. Thank you then for those that are tuning in on Facebook and later downloading and listening to the show. We appreciate it very much. Take care. Have a great weekend.
You've been listening to Real Estate Radio Live. For more information on today's program, visit RERadiolive.com. That's RERadiolive.com. Subscribe to our podcast. Discover more at RERadiolive.com.